Hello everybody, it's time for another HollowVine video. Okay, this time I got 5-0 again from the first try. Thought about this list again. Last time we played with Bushwhackers, and the version before that was my version playing Urbor Lurgov and playing Asmo. After playing the Bushwhacker version, I realized that Asmo is really kind of one of the weakest links in the deck, and it's only good. It's making you into bad choices while playing this deck. So you have Asmo in your starting hand, for example, and you have Burning Inquiry. So you think, okay, I won't do the Inquiry on turn 1 because I have the Asmo. So I try it on turn 2, then you go turn 2 Inquiry, and of course discard your own Asmo, and you realize that you just lost the turn doing nothing on turn 1, and now you can't have your very good turn 2, so kind of makes your plan worse and makes your planning worse, and it's not reliable. So in this deck, is nothing is really reliable. You have to count on the stuff not being reliable. So if you want to cast the Asmo of the Burning Inquiry, you get to count that there is a big chance it won't happen. So you will go for Inquiry turn 1 and discard Asthma from your hand and be left with a cookbook in your hand doing nothing. Okay, so after a lot of games, I realized this is not what I want to play in this deck, not what I want to do. And then I played Bushwhacker version and realized how powerful the Flameblade Adept can be. Also played Urborg Lurga version and realized how powerful Hedron Krebs can be in this deck, just making possible of playing one Ox less because it allows you to get Ox so consistently. And Ox is a card I would definitely play as a 4 off in a version without Crab, but Crab really helps with the Ox. So I think 3 is a great number in this variant. And since we are kind of have to play one land more in the crap version, I think have to have the fetches count, also have to have the shock counts. I need to have 2 vents. I need to have at least 3 stomping grounds to be able to cast Vengevine consistently from my hand. And because sometimes you'll just discard your stomping grounds from the lore or the inquiry, and that's why I decided to cut one adept because I needed to cut one lore too. And when while cutting lore, I realized maybe it's best to cut one adept. Uh, so the adept is still there. It's 3. It's a very decent card for this deck, and it can be pretty aggressive with inquiries and lures, but other cards have also shined in their own way. So a lot of good stuff going on here. Urberg Lurgoev and Hedron Crab all powerful by themselves, but in combination they are so good. And also Urberg Lurgoev just is enabler also for this deck. Milling cards by itself. Also, I decided to add the Blood Crypt now because of the Ulbrich Lurkov. The ability has been so relevant, and sometimes just casting this for 4 mana, milling six cards can be pretty incredible, and kind of refilling your graveyard of the card, which helps you to win the game, and it gets huge so fast, and you just opponent remove your graveyard. It's mid game or late game, then you top deck the Urberg Lurgoy played for 4 mana, get 6 cards in your graveyard. Lots of things can happen with 6 cards in graveyard. You can mill Ox of Agonas, you can mill a Wonder, you can mill a lot of creatures, a lot of useful stuff, Vengevines, whatever. And it just gets huge so fast, and it's even greater with Wonder if you have it to just fly over your opponent uh, with a huge amount of damage. Okay, that's it. I think this is a very near to perfected version of this all things I tried with this deck. It's very close to being like the version that I don't want to touch a card anymore for forever. So only thing I'm still thinking about is either playing 4 adept and to cut maybe fourth Hedron Crab or fourth Urborg for it. But that's about it. So everything else, main, I like the land more in the Crab version because I need also a crypt for the Urborg and need to have the shocks count to be able to get all shocks needed consistently because you sometimes discard them, so you got to have the spare ones. I got to have at least 2 basics. I got to sometimes just fetch the basics so you don't kill yourself with all the shocking. And uh, that's it. Yeah, so uh, on the sideboard is also now much better, much more tweaked than before for Havar Might because Havar Might has been incredible in this deck, and in the Sultai Crabwine is just one of the best homes for Havar Might is a Crabwine sideboard. This card for 1 mana helps you trigger Vengevine on turn 2, turn 3, while also being the most relevant artifact enchantment hate. Of course, sometimes in matchups where you just play artifact and artifact hate, you don't want to really bring this in because Ancient Grudge is so much more efficient because you can play it from your graveyard. So it doesn't matter if you don't have to fear of discarding it with Inquiry and Lore because you can just play it for 1 mana from your graveyard. So in the matchup, just playing Artifact Graveyard Hate and playing Chalice of the Void, you will bring in just Ancient Grudges. And sometimes you can just bring in Havar Mites if you just expect like them playing Leyline of the Void or Rip and no artifacts. You can just bring in Havar Mites and and sometimes against Hammer or Amulet Titan, you will bring both of them. And Ancient Grudge and Haver Might because it this is just so good. Okay, 2 Blood Moons because you can. I don't like more of these Blood Moons here because sometimes it will be great, but often when you have it, you have to hold your lores or inquiries. Try to play a bit slower, so go for, let's say, perfect would be going to turn to Neonate, discard Vengevine, play another 1 mana creature, then turn to Blood Moon, because your opponent will have to worry about your creatures on the field, and then you surprise them by Blood Moon. So you have to do some plays like that and just try to play Blood Moon on the curve. Of course, sometimes you are not able to do this, so you just go for the luck, cast lore, and just hope not to discard it. It's that kind of deck. But this version has been working so perfect, and 3 Furies, of course, for Doughty Voidwalker and other matchups. Playing a lot of small creatures can really blow them out, and it can also be a second creature to trigger the Vengevine. 3 Leyland Voids as the best graveyard hate for this kind of deck. Okay, so that's it. Deck list, as explained, feels now perfect to me. We will now go through the 5-0 League, another trophy for. Another trophy for Hollow Crab Wine. Okay, I think this was game 1. Playing first, keeping this in hand, land neonate to Vengevine, so I just kind of need a second land plus 1 mana creature for this hand to be perfect. I got a land, that's good, so I decided to go for it. I just play neonate, discard Vengevine, cycle street rates. I had 2 draws, but didn't draw into. Sorry, didn't draw into a second 1 mana creature, so not being able to um, bring back Vengevine was kind of unlucky, but What can you do? So my opponent had the Bojuka Boka, unfortunately. It is a one-off in their deck, so it's really unfortunate they had it, but still I was able to get a lot of damage to mill some cards with my Urber Gurgov and get some damage through with Goif, so basically my Goif just allowed me to win this game. Then they cast another Bojuka, so and I got played another third Urbal Gurgov for 4 mana, mill 6 cards, mill Wonder, so they couldn't block, and I got a lot of damage through. My opponent survived on 1 life, but they weren't able to do anything relevant, just another Bojuka Bog. But I had more than enough damage to finish this, pump my team, and that was it. Okay, winning game 1 against Amulet feels always pretty relevant. Okay, I keep again very decent hands, no hate unfortunately, so no Hayward Might, no Ancient Grudge. But have the ability to be aggressive on turn 2. I play land, cycle, discard Vengevine, play Neonate first, but you can see just how unfortunate I was. I discarded both of my hollow ones. I needed one of them to stay in my hand to trigger the Vengevine on this turn, and also left with 2 Rootwallas in hand. It's so unlucky. I had a Blood Moon for the next turn, so it was very good, but yeah, my opponent. Didn't matter anyway because my opponent had a kill on their turn 3. So just Titan, then a search for another Titan. Then so yeah, it's an infinite loop. They can bring all 4 Titans in, give them all haste. Sorry, 3 Titans, give them all haste, and just to finish me in one shot. So that's it. Okay, that was quick loss against game 2 against Amulet Titan. And they're pretty quick, but this deck is pretty quick too. So I start with Adept. This Adept can be really aggressive in this deck. So turn 1 Adept is one of the best, definitely one of the best starts. I had multiple options here. Decided for Inquiry. I find 2 hollow ones, attack for 4, so pretty aggressive. My opponent already on 16, I have 12 damage coming next turn. With the lore also messed up with my opponent's hand, discarded Amulet of Vigor. So I got the Ancient Grudge in the graveyard, got Vengevine into the graveyard, another Grudge in hand. My opponent is on 8 life, goes for Dryad, plays Expedition Map. Expedition Map could find them Valakut, which was pretty good. So I decided to go for the Grudge here from the graveyard, discard, destroy the map immediately. They played the Grazer, so unfortunately no mana, didn't draw land to cast this Vengevine from hand. And attack with everything, and after I thought about it a bit more, I shouldn't have attacked with Rootwalla this turn, so now they have easy block Rootwalla with Dryad and Grazer with Hollow One. If I didn't attack with Rootwalla, they would probably have to just not block anything with Dryad because the Adept has a Menace, and they have to block one of the Hollow Ones. So it was a bad attack. I would be much better if I didn't attack with Rootwalla, and now on this they would kill one Hollow One, and now I would have a definite lethal no matter what I draw. So, but anyway, I was good. So I just they were forced to jump my Hollow One with Dryad, which means GG for them. They don't have Amulet, so Titan doesn't mean much too. So that was it. That was game 1 against Amulet Titan. Chris MTG. Okay. Match 2 playing second. Pretty decent hand when you have Vengevine turn 2 and also Adept on turn 1. These kind of hands are definitely very good. Okay, game 2, my opponent playing I think a sparring spike version of Mono Blue Affinity. I'm playing Adept, second Adept to bring Vengevine back immediately on turn 2, then have Lore plus Neonate on turn 3 for a lot of damage with these Adepts. So that was my plan, definitely. My opponent got to use Emery and planned to make a Saga token, but that's just not good enough for what I'm doing. And what I'm doing is dealing a little damage this turn with another inquiry from hand. So these adepts are will be each at least 7-2, and just there too a little. They can also make a token, but a token will die, so they won't have much to do next turn. So they immediately concede. I'll also mess up their hand with my inquiry. Okay, so game 2, very good hand. This hand is so good that I don't even need to count of my on my Hedron crab. Usually in these situations you kind of have to save the crab for turn 2, but with so many inquiries and lowers in hand and HollowVine, I just definitely want to go for it turn 1. I was left with another inquiry in hand, which is very good. So turn 2 I go for another inquiry, go straight trade and play another HollowVine. And yeah, my opponent's deck just really can't deal with this kind of stuff. I discarded their Soulless Jailers, their Emery, their Urza Saga, so probably everything that was good in their hand, and also got the Grudges into my graveyard, got the Ox, so pretty good. It doesn't get much better than that, and also had the Neonate discarding Vengevine next turn, then two chances to draw a land, to cast Hedron Crab, to bring back Vengevine from the graveyard. Pretty crazy. And that was it. Pretty quick games here. My opponent quickly concedes. We can go to match 3. Again, a pretty good hand, and I think in these kind of situations, when you have these cyclers, the lore, stuff like that in graveyard, it's best to always play the adept on turn 1. My opponent, I go fetch turn 1, my opponent goes for the archive trap and immediately surgical on the Vengevine. Unfortunately, I lost my Vengevines, but this Vengevine is not the only way this deck can beat competition. So I attack with Adept for 4 here. My opponent is already on 2. I have another HollowVine on the field. I have the lore to deal a lot more damage here. So my opponent now on 4 life can't do much. I'm still on 21 card in library, and they didn't even draw the third land. So and that was it. It's always games against Mill are always funny with this type of decks. This hand had a lot of potential, had multiple options. I decided to go for the Neonate on turn 2 plus 3 trade, and then cast a HollowVine. So I discard the Vengevine, and I discard to go for Inquiry instead of cast HollowVine for 1 mana, which worked out pretty good. And I discarded the Soul Guide Lantern from their hand, which was kind of important. Taxed for 4 immediately. I think I failed a bit. Yeah, my opponent went for Sanctity, so they milled a real large amount of cards here. Um, so I go for the Ox. I play the Rootwalla, get both Vengevines back, but yeah, the one thing I messed up here, I forgot I don't have Steam Vents, so my Wonder didn't give my creatures flying. I didn't think about that when I played the land, so I wasn't able to play land after Ox, but also I just had 8 cards in my deck when I untapped, so I probably didn't even have the Steam Vents in library. But yeah, unfortunately, one of the rare situations where I didn't be able to get Vents on turn 1. I usually always do this, it's very important. Wonder can be relevant in this deck in so many situations, and unfortunately, no Steam Vents meant no flying, and my opponent was able to block and win this one. But yeah, fortunately, playing first in a third game against Mill, which is always a lot easier. So I got my Furies in to try to kill maybe a crab or two. Again, they go for the Archive Trap, and again, they have the extra paid for the Vengevines. So my opponent got really good hate for me, but it still didn't matter much. I decided to go for the Burning Inquiry to try to mess up with my opponent's hand. I discarded two removals and got the Rootwalla into hand. Also, draw some more cards. Okay, my opponent mills 3. They're on 10. I get Street Trade here, and I got the Goblin Lore, which was pretty good. And I think I failed again. Yeah, this game was full of fails, and I miscounted the damage. I forgot that lore discards 3 cards, not 4 cards. It draws 4 cards, but discards 3 cards. I was convinced that I will get a plus 4 on adept. I don't know. It was a bit of brain fart, as I say. And if I just played the Ox from the graveyard for 2 mana, I would discard 4 cards, which my adept would get +4/+4, and then I would just need to hope to draw a land of the Ox. It's also a bit risky. I can not draw a land there, so I needed not to play land before Ox because I would that way I would discard 4 cards to get my adept +4/+4. Then hope to draw a land to pump one of the root vallas to get the lethal damage on the same turn. But as I rushed with lore, I realized I am missing 1 damage. But fortunately, my opponent wasn't able to kill me without fetch anyway. So that was the game. Luckily, this mistake almost costed me the trophy, but luckily didn't. Okay, that was game 3, so game 4. Match 4, sorry. Match 4 was, I think, against Control. I had to mulligan this, obviously. I very much like to keep one landers with this deck, especially if I have the Inquiry. It's so good. Just so good. So again, I go for the Adept on turn 1, so I have so multiple very good options. If I draw the land, I'll then go for Hedron Crab, and plus the Rootwalla, which is very good, but I didn't draw it, so I was forced to go for the Inquiry. Unfortunately, this didn't go well. Just so unlucky sometimes. You obviously sometimes get so unlucky with this, and I discarded the hollow one, discarded the Urborg Lurgoth, and discarded the Hedron Crab. So I discarded my best payoff, and I discarded 2 enablers, which is very unlucky. And also, if you and I was left in a hand with 2 Rutvalas, which are freely played when you discard it with Madness. So and So now left with the two Rottweilers in hand and multiple lands, just so unlucky. Also drawing into more lands. Yeah, it's I don't think this happens a lot, really. I think this happens very rarely. So this was definitely now bad situation. My opponent playing Shellis with a lot of my hands being a lot of my cards being 1 mana. So I just played for a bit more. I can cast this hollow one, but I get to cast lower, try to cast hollow one, they counterspell it here. This just didn't matter. This was game over. I conceded. I conceded on the same turn, so that was it. But control is usually a pretty decent matchup for this deck, so I was convinced that I am going to be able to turn this around. Unfortunately, it didn't start well. I draw into my first draw was fourth land, which was pretty bad. Pretty bad. So, but I was playing first here and had two Goblin Lores, so all my fate was in this Goblin Lore and the Ox of Agonas, and them not being able to deal with Ox. And I was right, so they didn't have Graveyard Hate on turn 2. They had the Shellis, but didn't matter. I played the Neonate just to get the 8 cards in graveyard, then played the Ox, discard my entire hand. My opponent has the subtlety, but it was okay. Didn't care that much. I had one more lower and two more inquiries in hand. I just wanted that Ox in hand. I was sure I'm going to discard it again easily. So I start again lower. Um, I fill my graveyard. It doesn't matter that I can't do anything this turn. I'm in no hurry. My hand is great. I first decide to get rid of the Chalice. Then try to go first for the Blood Moon, but they have to counter this. Then just Inquiry. I really love casting Inquiry against Control, messing up their hand, discarding Solitude. It's always so good. I get my Ox into the graveyard, gets two creatures on the field, another Vengevine in hand, so pretty good situation here. My opponent casts Solitude, but it doesn't matter. Just one card in their hand means and they're definitely going to lose this against my Ox. So the Ox ability to grind is just infinite. And I got another grudge in the graveyard, attacking with Vengevine. They kill my Ox, which I really like. So I'm filling the graveyard so quickly. Fetch Rootwalla dies. Anything from the top really just helps fill my graveyard very quickly. And now I get two 4/3 creatures attacking my opponents, playing control with one card in hand. This is a pretty good situation. Uh, they actually drew very well into Archmage Charm, which was one of the best draws for them. And one unit of the top means I get lands to cast the Hollow One again. I got exactly cards I need. Already casted two creature spells, so I couldn't bring back Vengevine this turn. They again draw two with Broker's Charm, then concede, no chance. And it was time for game 3 again in a control matchup. Pretty good always. These adepts, of course, can be very aggressive. Nothing crazy is happening. I'm just playing 1 mana creatures which can attack for 4 damage on turn 2. So it's good, but it's nothing that crazy that this deck can usually do. So I just go for the Neonate and the second Adept. I really wanted to try to play the second one and then go for the attack with the Inquiry next turn. But my opponent had some solutions for my adepts. They go for the Gust. I put it on top of my library. Really like this adepts. So they go for the fairy, and that's when I decide to just kill the fairy, replay both of my adepts, then I try to do the same plan again next turn. Played my third land. I definitely like having third land, three lands here, so I'm playing a land is definitely something I want to do. They have the ending for my adept before I get a chance to use the inquiries or whatever. I draw Blood Moon from the top of my library. I wanted to draw land to be able to go both Moon and the Inquiry on the same turn. But I just decided to go for the Moon because my opponent has to deal with this. They have to use the counter spell for it, even with the basic planes at island. So again, I go for the Moon. As I said, they have to use the counter spell on this, and they did. So now they have the fairy on the field, which is okay, but I go for inquiry. They cast. Really didn't want to discard this adept from my hand, so I just wanted to play him before, and also because of the Vengevine. And if I'm left with the hollow one, as it happened, I'll be able to bring back Vengevine. That was the plan. So they actually exiled my adept, but it wasn't that important. I never want to just play Rutvala as a one as a form to put it into play like this in situations when I have when I intend to use the inquiry, and unfortunately wasn't able to cast my Rotwala here because of the Teferi. Teferi really doesn't play good with my madness, but it's okay. I got 3 Vengevines into the graveyard, so I just need a second creature to trigger them all, and it's pretty easy to draw the second creature with this much mana in a deck playing just creatures. So it shouldn't be that hard, really. So I drew it to Hermite. Hermite's so good. It destroys their rest in peace, whatever they usually play, and also it's a 1 mana creature to cast to get Vengevine into play early. It also destroys the Leyline bindings. I don't know the other tricky enchantments. So I get all my Vengevines into play, which is definitely what I wanted to have. The Ancient Grudge in graveyard in case they play Chalice. So they bounced one, exiled the second Vengevine, but it was still okay. I had exiled the binding to get my Hollow One back. It was still a very decent game. I went for the Lurgoyf. Here, my opponent plays the dress down, so I don't get the. Unfortunately, didn't get the mill, but it's okay. My opponent has the binding and trades with this Vengevine. So very interesting battle. I go for the Vengevine again, attack the opponent with Goif and attack the fairy with these two. I was convinced Vengevine is going to die, so I wanted to deal at least 1 damage to the fairy so they're not able to use the bounce next turn. And now I'm kind of hoping when I drew the neonate, I decided to go for the cycle, which gives me a large chance to bring back Vengevine this turn. They go for the subtlety as they now have 0 cards in hand, and I put the neonate, of course, on top of my deck. Neonate is so good in this situation; they make my job even easier. They countered the adept, but they really should have countered the. I don't know. Like, it doesn't matter. I would just play the Ox for 5 mana next turn, so I would still be in a pretty good situation. But this way I got my Avenger back. They were forced to trade with Vengevine, and then I replayed the Ox from my hand, and now draw 3 cards in the situation where My opponent just doesn't have much. I was very happy with my hand. I didn't want to do anything this turn. Just try to bring back second Vengevine next turn and finish this game. So I play my Vengevine first, then use the Inquiry. So they exile Vengevine in response. I guess the Rutvala still can't play it immediately, but I got the Ox into the graveyard with Inquiry, so I was able to play Ox, second Ox again, bring back Vengevine, draw three more cards, pretty good. I misclicked, didn't attack with Ox here, but I was just so in such a good position here. It didn't even matter. They whatever they do now doesn't really matter. They really can't get out of the situation. So pretty intense game in a match 4 against Control, but did it. Did it, and it was time for a trophy match. Again, starting first with the with Adept, sorry. Adept into lore is always pretty good, especially if you get some Rutvalas into play. I got even better play, draw into the Neonate, then discarding the Vengevine, playing Rutvala, bringing Vengevine back, and my opponent tries to block Adept. They can't, of course. They're already on 11 life. The trade with Dragavan here. But I have the lore to pump the Adept next turn too. Also, Wonder in graveyard now. Casting another land. HollowVine is just too crazy. Too crazy. This Murktide opponent just can't deal with this. It's too much. It's too much on turn 3 for the Murktide opponent with another HollowVine being cast and have the lore, another lore for next turn, another Vengevine. Yeah, pretty easy. Pretty easy. Okay, had to mulligan this definitely. Had to mulligan this too. Leave five decent cards in hand. I decided to leave Vengevine together with these spells. So mulligan to five, but still my murdered opponent had no chance. Maybe they would have chance if they were able to counter these lords and inquiries, but this being mostly creature deck, they probably boarded out. Maybe spell pierces. I'm not sure. So I got pumped the adept this turn. Got the Vengevine into graveyards. I was able to cast my hollow one. Not bringing Vengevine this turn back, but it's always nice to have it. So I go for the Inquiry, play the Rootfall of the Inquiry, cycle, the Street Raid, cast my Hollow One, bring back two Vengevines, and again on turn 3, my opponent is done. I also have a huge Urborg Lurgoyf for play next turn, and another Ox in hand if I draw something to discard it with, and that's it. Pretty easy game against a Murktide opponent, and that was it. Pretty quick league, easy trophy for this deck. List is perfect. I really like it. It's like feels like performing the best that it ever has with any variant I played before. So I think Asmo was the weakest link, and weakest link in the last list. And this adept was so good in this league. I'm definitely considering adding a fourth adept instead of maybe fourth Glurgoyf or fourth Crab, something like that. But yeah, this all cards are just so good. Urborg Glurgoyf won a few games just by itself. It's just such a good card here. 2 mana, huge creature, which is can also be enabler in the mid game if you can play it for 3-4 mana. And now I also have a crypt in my mana base, so I can play it for 4 mana with 2 kickers. Because its ability says kicker blue and or black. So you can either play any one of those mana, but you can also play both, and you get a 2 kicker ability, so mill 6 cards. And that's it. Deck is crazy good. It really feels really powerful, and I really enjoy it. And this will be my final list with only one possible change for the future. Is addition of fourth adept, but I still have to think what could get out for it. And other than that, the list feels perfect. I think this is the most perfected HollowVine list I ever played. Uh, and of course, there are some versions that were extremely fun to play. But if you want to take this deck to large tournament, I think this is a variant you need to take. That's it. It's perfect. It feels so very good. Okay, that's it. Hope you liked the video. Hope you liked the matches, the deck. And that's it for this time. If you want to help the channel, click subscribe, click like, and yeah, until the next time.